There's a moment, a split-second decision, when someone calls you out, questions your worth, attacks your intent, and in that moment, most people do what they were trained to do: defend themselves. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood me. I'm not like that. I swear it sounds noble, reasonable, fair, but to Machiavelli, that's the moment you lose everything. Because the second you defend yourself, you admit weakness. You admit their accusation is worth answering. And in the game of power, perception is everything. The instant you flinch, they don't see a victim. They smell blood. Machiavelli understood a brutal truth. The man who defends himself lowers himself. The man who doesn't forces the world to defend him instead. Let's be clear, defending yourself rarely convinces anyone. What it really does is shift the balance of power by justifying your actions. You step onto their battlefield, you accept their frame, you're saying, without realizing it, you have the authority to question me. And once they hold that frame, they own the narrative. Even if you're right, you still look guilty. Because only the weak rush to explain the strong. They let the silence burn. They let accusations hang, untouched. Because the real move isn't defense, it's reflection. Flip the accusation into a mirror. Make them look unstable. Make them look bitter, obsessive, emotional. Because the one who speaks first usually loses control of the frame, and whoever owns the frame owns the outcome. Most people defend themselves because they crave understanding. They believe if they explain enough, repeat enough, clarify enough, they'll be vindicated. But that's not strategy, that's desperation. You don't want clarity, you want control. Clarity is for therapy, control is for power, and power never comes from being understood. The power of silence. A Machiavellian law. There's a truth most people never learn until it's too late. Power is not lost when someone insults you. Power is lost the moment you react. Think about it. Someone calls you arrogant, selfish, manipulative, cold. The ordinary person, almost by instinct, leaps to defend themselves. No, that's not who I am. You don't understand. That's not what I meant. You're taking this the wrong way. It feels natural. It feels like the right thing to do. But in that moment, you've already surrendered, because now you're no longer the one in control. You've given your accuser the steering wheel. You've agreed without realizing it, that their words matter enough to justify, clarify, and explain yourself. And here's the brutal law of power that Niccolo Machiavelli understood centuries ago. He who explains, submits he who defends himself, kneels he who reacts, bleeds. The strongest weapon in human interaction is not aggression, not justification, not even charisma. It is mystery. Mystery is the oxygen of power. And the moment you rush to defend yourself, you suffocate it. The tyranny of reaction. To the average person, defending themselves looks noble. They think if they explain enough, people will understand them. They believe fairness and reason will win out. But power doesn't operate in the world of fairness. Power operates in the world of perception. And perception is cruel. When you defend yourself, people don't see a victim being mistreated, they see weakness. They see someone scrambling to convince, they see someone reacting, and the one who reacts always loses to the one who dictates the frame. The strong never rush to explain, they let. Accusations hang in the air like smoke, unanswered. They let silence do the work. They let the accuser sweat under the weight of their own words, because silence forces everyone else to question not you, but the attacker, the weapon of silence. Think of the most powerful people you've ever met. They weren't the loudest in the room. They weren't the ones who interrupted, argued, or defended every slight. No, the ones who linger in your memory are the ones who could hold silence like a blade. The ones who, when attacked, didn't flinch. The ones who, when insulted, simply stared. The ones who, by saying nothing, made you second-guess yourself. Why is silence so devastating? Because the human mind hates uncertainty. An unanswered accusation turns into a mirror, reflecting not the target, but the accuser. They start asking themselves, did I overstep? Did I just make a fool of myself? Why isn't he responding? Their confidence crumbles. Their words echo back at them, hollow, unsupported. The crowd doesn't remember the accusation, they remember your calm, and suddenly, the power balance has flipped. The social arena, imagine this scene. You walk into a crowded room. Someone takes a shot at you. Maybe it's subtle, maybe it's direct, a jab at your success. Your personality, your past, everyone looks at you, waiting to see your response. Most people would defend. Some might throw an insult back, but the Machiavellian move? You say nothing. No defense, no retaliation, no smirk, just calm, total stillness. What happens? The room shifts. People begin to ask themselves, why didn't he react? Does he know something we don't? Is he above this? Did that attack just make him stronger? In that moment, you've done something extraordinary. You flipped the frame entirely. People aren't focused on the insult anymore. They're focused on your silence, and silence, delivered with composure, speaks louder than 1,000. Justification's Machiavelli's psychological edge. Machiavelli wasn't just a political theorist, he was a psychologist of power before psychology existed. He knew human beings are driven by appearances, not truths. That silence isn't passive, it's active. It makes people project their own fears and insecurities onto you. Here's what he would tell you. The man who explains lowers himself because explanation is a plea. It's begging to be understood. The man who is silent raises himself because silence forces others to fill in the blanks, and they almost always overestimate the man who inverts owns the field because the boldest move is not to fight back, but to casually twist the blade back into the hand that swung it, the inversion. Coldest move in the game. Sometimes the silence itself isn't enough. Sometimes the most Machiavellian play is inversion. Someone calls you manipulative. Instead of defending yourself, you smile faintly, look past them, and say, if that's how you see it, not defensive, not apologetic, just calm, neutral detachment. What happens? They were expecting resistance. They wanted a fight. They wanted you to sweat. Instead, you toss their weapon back into their hands without even lifting a finger. Now they're the ones left scrambling. They start wondering if they've gone too far, if they embarrassed themselves, if they've just made themselves look insecure. And here's the irony. They have by refusing to engage. You forced them to carry the weight of their own accusation. The energy they tried to throw at you is snapped back and trapped them. That's psychological judo, the art of letting your enemy defeat themselves the burden of silence. There's a moment when silence stretches long enough that it becomes unbearable, but not for you, for them. The accuser begins to sweat. They start repeating themselves. They look around for validation that doesn't come. They dig their own grave, word by word. What began as their attack now looks like obsession, desperation, even instability. They thought they were exposing you, but the longer you stay still, the more exposed they become, and that's the ultimate flip. The accuser becomes the needy one, the one begging for recognition, the one desperate for a reaction, while you're elevated, untouchable. Untamed power is never in words. Here's the paradox. People believe power lies in what you say, in persuasion, in explanation, in argument. But that's a myth. Real power lies in what you don't say, in the things people believe you could say, but choose not to, in the mystery of unspoken knowledge, in the aura of restraint. Because when you say nothing, people imagine everything. They fill the silence with their own fears, doubts, and stories. They give you more credit than you deserve, simply because you didn't shatter the illusion, the untouchable. And that brings us to the final truth. When you refuse to react, when you master silence, when you invert attacks with calm detachment, you stop being just another person defending themselves. You become something else, untouchable, unreachable, a figure others can't quite pin down. And in that space, you hold the ultimate advantage. Not that people understand you, but that they never fully do. Not that you convince them, but that you make them convince themselves, because power isn't about being liked. It isn't about being understood. It isn't even about being right. Power is about being beyond reach. Power is about making others bend. Around you, power is about silence that crushes louder than words ever could. And that's the lesson Machiavelli left behind, the man who defends. Himself loses the man who remains still. Wins the untouchable law of silence. There's something far more powerful than being seen as innocent. It's being seen as untouchable. Machiavelli understood a truth most people never will. Words aren't meant to clarify truth, they're meant to obscure it. And when someone attacks you, whether subtle or direct, their goal is simple. They want you to fight the fog. They want you to drown in explanation. Because the more you explain, the less certain you appear. The power move. Let the silence breathe. Watch what happens. They overplay. They repeat themselves. Their tone cracks. They start looking desperate, emotional, unstable. You've said nothing, yet now they are the one on trial. Why? Because the crowd isn't judging the words. They're watching the body language. They're watching who's calm and who's rattled. That's social power, and it doesn't come from being right. It comes from being untouchable. The business arena picture, a boardroom. Someone undermines you with a smirk. I'm not sure that strategy was really thought through. Or he always has these big, bold ideas. They want a reaction. They want you to defend, to explain, to sweat. Most people take the bait. They lean forward, clarifying, proving, nervously filling the air, and the room smells the weakness. But the Machiavellian operator, he leans back. He waits, maybe even smiles, and when he speaks, it isn't defense, it's redirection. Let's hear your strategy then. Now the frame flips. Suddenly, the accuser is the one under the spotlight. They have to perform, they have to defend. And the silence of your confidence is the loudest accusation in the room. Silence makes people feel small without you lifting a finger. The romantic arena. Now take this into relationships. Where emotion rules, your partner looks at you and says, "You don't care about me anymore." The average person panics. They rush into reassurances, explanations, desperate promises. And in doing so, they validate the emotional frame. They confirm that the accusation has power, but the Machiavellian response is colder. You don't argue, you don't dismiss. You let the accusation hang in the air, and when you do speak, it's brief, calm, grounded. That's not how I see it. No explanation, no justification, just a steady refusal to step into their frame. Now they feel uncertain. Now they question their own tone because you controlled the one thing that matters most, the emotional tempo. And whoever controls the tempo controls the frame, the disappearance tactic. There's a colder move still. Not just silence, but disappearance. Someone insults you, don't reply. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge, but don't block them either. Leave the door open, just never walk through it. That absence is a mirror, and it shatters people. They realize you didn't even deem them worthy of a response. They start spinning stories in their head. They reach out again, they post more, they gossip. They try harder to bait you, and with every attempt, they look weaker, more obsessed, more unhinged. Meanwhile, you haven't lifted a finger. You win, not by proving anything, but by letting them destroy themselves in their hunger for your reaction. The inversion. And here's the elite level move. Don't just refuse to. Defend yourself. Flip the blade, someone calls you arrogant. Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable. They call you manipulative. Funny, only people who can't be influenced say that. They call you fake. That's what people say when they stop getting what they want. See what just happened? You didn't just deny the accusation. You reframed it as their insecurity. Now they're the ones scrambling. Now they're defending themselves. That's not defense, that's power. Judo. You used their force against them and made them collapse under their own weight. Machiavelli had a name for this. The turn of the blade. Don't meet the sword with a shield. Let the attacker fall on their own steel. The untouchable truth. The world teaches you to explain, to justify, to defend. But defense is surrender. Explanation is weakness. Justification is blood in the water. The Machiavellian law is different. Stay silent, stay still, stay untouchable, because the one who defends himself kneels, but the one who doesn't forces the world to defend him instead, and that's how you stop being innocent and start being untouchable. The Machiavellian law of power. The world teaches you to defend your reputation, to explain yourself, to clear your name, but Machiavelli saw the trap. He knew the moment you chase innocence, you've already admitted guilt. The true strategist never plays that game. He appears too composed to be rattled, too elevated to care, too certain of his position to explain it. And slowly, those who attack him start to look unstable, reactive, jealous, weak. Because here's the paradox. The more you defend, the more it looks like you need to. The more you ignore, the more dangerous people assume you are. And assumption, fear, mystery, that's where power is born, the illusion of proving. Yourself. Most people think power is about proving you're right, proving you're not who they say you are, proving you're better than their judgment. But Machiavelli would smirk at this, because the second you try to prove anything, you've already declared their opinion valid. And the moment you do that, you hand them your leash. The social arena. Picture yourself at a dinner table, a meeting, a crowded group. Someone throws a jab in public. You always act like you know everything. I guess being humble isn't your thing. What do most people do? They tense up, they laugh nervously. Or worse, they explain themselves, trying to smooth it over. They think they're saving face, but in reality, they just confirmed the hit landed. Now everyone's watching, not the insult, but the defense. And that alone makes the jab look true, the Machiavellian. Move is different. You pause. You hold the silence, you scan the room with quiet amusement. And maybe, only if you choose, you respond with something short and dismissive. You seem emotional today. Interesting take, or nothing at all, just a still, unreadable gaze. What happens? The attacker fidgets. They backpedal. They search for support. The heat shifts onto them. Your lack of reaction just told the room something louder than words ever could. You're not the one on trial. They are. The digital arena online. The tempo accelerates. Comments, call-outs, DMs, people baiting you to react. And here's the truth. Machiavelli would carve into your mind. In the court of public opinion, silence looks like guilt, unless your silence commands fear. So here's the move. Don't defend. Don't explain, distort. Someone calls you toxic, manipulative, dangerous? Don't write a long defense post this instead. People always call you dangerous when they can't control you. What happened? You didn't defend. You reframed. You turned their accusation into a badge of power. Now, they look bitter. You look untouchable. And the crowd starts to wonder, who's really in control here? That's not damage control. That's narrative dominance. The three tools, forget defense. The Machiavellian toolkit has only 3 weapons. Silence. Cold heavy. Exposing it forces the other side to sweat deflection. Reframe the narrative without ever stepping into their trap. Precision cuts short. Sharp truths that end the game on impact examples. You're full of yourself. Confidence upsets the insecure. You're fake. I don't owe you authenticity. You think you're better than everyone? No, I just don't think like everyone. These aren't defenses, they're status assertions. They don't say I'm not guilty. They say you can't touch me. The enemies collapse. When you refuse to defend yourself, something strange happens. Your enemies unravel. They expected resistance. They prepared for a battle. But instead, they swing at smoke, and in that frustration, they overextend, they escalate, they push harder, they get louder, more dramatic, more emotional, and every time they do, the crowd doesn't see you fall. They see them collapse. That's the end game. You don't destroy your enemies, you let their obsession with you destroy themselves. The myth of reputation. Here's the final illusion. You don't need a good reputation to win. You need a strong one. The man with a good reputation is expected to be clean, agreeable, soft. The man with a strong reputation is seen as dangerous, untouchable, unpredictable, and unpredictability is fear. The misunderstood man has mystery. The predictable man is easy to manipulate. The one always clarifying looks desperate. The one calmly misunderstood. He's feared. Machiavelli knew it well. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. But there's an even sharper truth. It's better to be confusing than predictable. Because the confused man hesitates. He watches carefully. He doesn't strike rashly, and that means you control the battlefield. The Machiavellian rule. So here's the law. Never beg to be seen as good. Never fight for innocence. Never chase reputation through defense. Be untouchable. Be unreadable. Be feared. Because the man who defends himself is a servant to other people's judgment. But the man who refuses, who dares to be misunderstood, he's not just safe. He's untouchable. A strong reputation isn't about being liked. It isn't about being trusted. It's about being untouchable, the kind of presence that makes others hesitate before they move against you. That's what happens when you refuse to defend yourself. Your reputation stops being about what people believe. It becomes about what they fear you'll do next. That's how power flips. You stop begging for approval, and instead, you cultivate an aura that forces caution. Even your silence becomes a statement. Even your stillness feels like a decision. Every move you don't make lives rent-free in their minds, but silence is only the beginning. The highest level isn't silence, it's aura. A presence so calm, so composed, so secure that accusations collapse before they even land. And here's the secret. It doesn't come from being emotionless. It comes from being unbothered by design. Once you've trained yourself not to defend, not to explain, not to seek validation, you cross a line. You become someone whose very existence is the defense. That's when power stops being effort and becomes effortless. Think about the rare people you've seen who never explain themselves. They don't rant. They don't correct the record. They don't clap back at critics. And yet, they command more respect. Why? Because silence in the face of an accusation creates myth. It forces interpretation. And when people are left with no explanation, the human mind fills that gap with strength. They start to assume, you must be dangerous. You must know something they don't. You must be so unshakable that you don't even blink when challenged. And that assumption, that's where influence is. Born Machiavelli didn't care about being good. He cared about being in control. And the one who never defends himself controls perception. Even in a storm of lies, here's the paradox. The more you explain yourself, the more alone you look, because when you're already pleading your case, no one feels the need to step in for you. But if you stay calm, if you stay still, if you stay unfazed, people start to feel the urge to defend you. He didn't deserve that. Why are you going after him? Look, he didn't even respond, and you're still attacking. Suddenly, they become your shield. They fight for your name while you remain above the noise. And what's more powerful than defending yourself? Making others do it for you without asking. That's pure Machiavellian leverage. You don't demand respect, you attract it. Not by force, but by restraint. You build it like a fortress, stone by stone, through stillness, composure, and refusal to play petty games. Start small. Never react to insults that are only designed to provoke. Let them echo in the air. Your silence makes it clear the words didn't even register. When someone takes a subtle shot, respond with calm confusion instead of offense. Is that how you see it? Said without tension, it dismantles the emotional sting instantly. Close conversations with short, sharp endings, not defenses. Noted okay time will tell. Each one shuts the door. Each one denies further debate. Study yourself, your face, your body language, your eyes. A true Machiavellian doesn't twitch, flinch, or tense. Stillness becomes armor. And the more still you are while others lose control, the more your unseen power grows. Because once people realize they can't provoke you, they start to fear you not because you're erratic, but because you're unreadable. A mirror that reflects their instability back at them. Machiavelli would tell you the most dangerous man isn't the one who strikes first, it's the one who never needs to strike. You'll reach a point where attacks stop, not because you fought them off, but because people know they'll lose before they even begin. That's the difference. Strength can still flinch, strength still reacts, strength still bleeds when provoked. But true power? True power is immunity, the kind that doesn't even acknowledge the blow. That's the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win arguments. You erase the need for them. The battle ends before it begins, because you never step into the ring. The moment you stop defending yourself, people stop treating you like someone who needs to be judged. You're no longer on trial. You've moved beyond the court of public approval. The only verdict that matters now is your own from here. You stop living in defense. You start living in definition. You define your image. You define your presence. You define even your silence. And people feel it. They feel the certainty behind your eyes, the calm in your posture, the quiet threat in your stillness. You're not resisting anymore. You're commanding. That's when the atmosphere shifts. The room grows quieter. Your enemies second-guess themselves. Your name starts to carry weight, not because you fought for it, but because you never explained it. Understand this. Refusing to defend yourself doesn't mean staying mute forever. It means speaking only when it tilts the balance of power. Every word you choose should feel like a move, not a response. And every silence should feel heavier than speech, because each time you decline to explain, each time you stand still while the world spins, you become the one thing no one can control. A man who answers to no one.